this is not a good sign.
If the First Lady has one consistent trait, it's this. She fabricates everything. I'm serious. It's actually hard to find one thing Trump has said that is truthful and honest and did not crawl out of his large, pasty arse. I mean, where do you want to start? Fact-checking the First Lady is a full-time job with overtime. And it seems that job, over the last 10 years, has worn down the Washington Post, CNN, CBS, MSNBC, and especially the voices of early dissent, like Vance, Rubio, or Cruz. As Moscow Mitch plans to leave Washington, his fatigued resignation tells it all. In the marathon of bullshit, Trump is world-class. And that has made the world an even more dangerous place.
There was no collusion at all.
Those comments coming on the heels of last week's grand jury indictment of 12 Russian intelligence officers for their alleged roles in committing cyber crimes to interfere in the 2016 election.
The indictment charges 12 Russian military officers by name for conspiring to interfere with the 2016 presidential election.
It's one thing when Trump lies about Stormy Daniels.
Prove that I'm lying. Prove I didn't see your dick.
Or his economic numbers, or immigration, or crime. Add that to his lies about COVID, which the CDC and NIH estimated cost more than 500,000 American lives. And even today, an outbreak in Texas of measles, which has cost one child his life so far.
There are now more than 120 confirmed measles cases linked to an outbreak in western Texas, the largest such outbreak the state's seen in over 30 years.
If you walk into a room and you have measles, 80 to 90% of those individuals within a week will come down with measles.
But it's an entirely different matter when Trump lies about his secret communications with Russia.
So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that?
Or when Trump lies about his relationship with dictators in Hungary, Turkey, the Saudis, and domestically white supremacists.
Very fine people on both sides.
And there are three disturbing parts about these lies, which I'll get to in a moment. But first, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's more fun than watching Eric Trump try to remember his 4-digit PIN. The three parts to Trump's lies are simple. One, they've destroyed America's credibility worldwide. I mean, NATO has to be saying what I'm saying. Who would vote for this guy? Two, the repetition and threats have turned the entire party and Fox News into his enablers, too cowardly to stand up and willing to repeat the lies so frequently told that his base even believes them.
You're saying that in California you can kill a newborn baby up to 4 weeks until after it's born?
Absolutely.
That's not true.
That is true.
That's not true.
The law in the last year or two.
That is not true. That's not true.
You need to go do your research.
100% not true.
Why are you forcing your lifestyle over on me?
Who's forcing you to be gay?
Joe Biden and his crew.
Joe Biden's forcing you to be gay?
No, not forcing me. Make sure you get that right. I ain't gay and ain't got nothing to do with it, okay?
What would solve the whole thing in the border if they would just start shooting? Only shoot a couple and they would go home.
You think deterrence would work?
If they would shoot.
And the third part is the lies have energized Trump's violent base to attack any and all Americans who oppose him, from lying about Kamala Harris's race.
When she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
To Liz Cheney's patriotism.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
And now with Trump's cabal of the misinformed and Musk's well-funded threats against anyone who voices opposition, there's an ominous dark cloud descending over our democracy.
Let me run through some of the big ones. We heard this claim again from the president. He's been saying it over and over in the past week that the U.S. has provided Ukraine with $350 billion worth of aid and that this is about 3 times what Europe collectively has provided. That is not true. The $350 billion number is not true, nor is the idea that the U.S. has provided way more than Europe. So according to a think tank in Germany that closely tracks this aid, it is Europe that has collectively provided more aid to Ukraine than the U.S. has in terms of aid committed. It's about double, about $260 billion for Europe to about $125 billion for the U.S. In terms of aid allocated, it's narrower, but Europe still leads. The president also repeated this claim he's been saying over and over that the U.S. ranks 40th out of 40 in some education rankings. I specifically asked the White House what those rankings were. They were not able to point to any of them. It appears not to exist. In fact, the U.S. Is above average in reading and science and below average, though far from last, in math rankings, even of wealthy countries. He said the U.S. is the only country with mail-in voting. It simply isn't. He said the U.S. took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in the tariffs he imposed in the first term. In fact, Americans paid those tariffs. Americans make those tariff payments, and it's not true that Trump was the first president to impose tariffs on China. He said that we lose $300 300,000 people to fentanyl deaths every year. In fact, it's about 60,000 deaths per year. Still a tragedy, of course, horrible, but nowhere close to what he's saying. He said the European Union does not take American farm products. In fact, it is the fourth biggest market for U.S. agricultural exports of $13 billion per year. He offered another alternate history of the European Union's formation, saying it was formed to take advantage of the U.S. In fact, it was formed with U.S. support, so not even close to correct. And so I don't even know where to go from here. He said there was no inflation when he left office. It was low, but it existed, about 1.4%. He said a lot of the U.S. fentanyl comes from Canada. In fact, 0.2%, about 43 pounds worth, came from Canada, so just a tiny number. And he repeated this claim we heard a lot during his presidency, saying that President Obama merely provided Ukraine with sheets. He used to say pillows in sheets rather than actual military aid. In fact, the Obama administration provided things like counter-mortar radars, armored Humvees, tactical drones, so it was not simply pillows and sheets. And I'll give you one more. He said that, the million people who didn't respond to this email, this 5 things that you did last week email from Elon Musk's team may not exist. I guess it's possible the U.S. government is paying some people who don't exist, but I think it's important to note that we had numerous agency heads, department heads telling their employees not to respond. So the simpler explanation is that people were instructed not to do this rather than them being, fictional, non-existent human beings.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to ask you about. That is definitely something that when all is said and done, we're going to want the receipts on. Suggestions that the people who have not responded maybe don't exist, as you said. There was one other doozy, which was the allegation that there were Social Security checks going to people who are 150 years old. Those people got older during the cabinet meeting today. Apparently, they're 200 years old. So
wow. And not one Republican, not one stood up. Why? Because they're nothing but a collection of cowardly cuckolds, weak men and women who are willing to f*** over the entire nation and our Constitution for power and money. Even the theocrats.
There are demonic forces.
These guys are the worst in that they invoke God in their greedy little playbook. But the thing about Obama really pisses me off. Obama backed Ukraine, and Biden was backing him in the 90s after the USSR broke up. And it was Paul Manafort in the summer of 2016. He was running the Trump campaign after fleeing Ukraine, where he was a close advisor to the Putin-backed dictator Yanukovych. Anyway, he fled Ukraine, came and worked for Trump, and then the Republicans that summer pulled support for Ukraine at the 2016 RNC. The polls, well, they may be starting to show a pushback. Trump's favorability is at an all-time low among modern presidents. But what does that really mean? What can people really do? Could Trump block the midterms? The Supreme Court gave him immunity. He's questioned removing judges and even serving a third term in clear violation of the 22nd Amendment. And ask yourself this, if Trump declared martial law and employs the military to arrest Biden, Rachel Maddow, or Adam Schiff,
we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice.
And while Trump claims up is down and wrong is right, the institutions that once held him accountable are weak. Advertisers are fleeing the networks, and Americans are weary. So the question is, while Trump attacks America, what are you prepared to do?
It's very simple. You're a nasty person.
Damn right.
I'm as mad as hell.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong? Yes.
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.